Now first, we need to understand where this mindset that most humans naturally have comes from. In early human days, rejection from our peers meant death. Basically, if you were rejected from your social group in most of human history, you're basically just banished to death. You cannot survive on your own. You had to fight against Denisovans, you had to fight against Neanderthals and shit, you had to fight against other humans, you had to fight against other groups, other animals, you had to fight against saber-toothed tigers and shit. You had to fight against these elite-ass animals, and you had to live in the cold. Pretty much, you were not going to survive on your own. So basically, if your group rejected you, then you were absolutely cooked. So the number one priority for most humans in history was to make sure that their group was not going to reject them and that they needed to be seen in a positive light according to the hierarchy of whatever group that they were in. Preferably, they'd like to be at the top, but however high they could possibly get was where they wanted to be. Because if you were low in that hierarchy, or if you were outside the hierarchy and got kicked out the group, you were cooked. There was no lone wolf humans, and if they were, very few of them. So that same frame of mind was passed on to us. So our brain still treats rejection like death in many scenarios. The thing is, we just need to work on rewiring our brains. Even babies from ages 1 to 3 put parental approval at their utmost priority, and their entire shape of themselves is dictated how their parents treat them and how their parents view them, and if they feel rejected or neglected, or if they feel praised and if they feel validated. If they feel validated, they'll feel like, they have a strong sense of self and they'll be confident within themselves. If they feel like their parents are rejecting them, they're gonna feel like they aren't worthy. They're gonna be unconfident, and they're always gonna seek that external validation from elsewhere. So basically, somebody's view of themselves can be dictated from the time that they were toddlers, and that can still persist on until the time that they're adults, if they don't rewire their brains into stopping that same pattern of thinking. And this never really stops from about, I think, ages 4 to 5. That's when kids start seeking the approval of their peers over their parents. So basically, if they're bullied, if they're rejected, or if they're kicked out of their social group, then they're basically going to be extremely unconfident, and they're going to feel like, dude, that's death. That's the worst thing that could possibly happen. This is why bullying affects kids so bad, because they seek their peers' validation over anything else. That's their entire world. Think about it. When you were a kid, you felt like the school that you were at was Earth, and then the next school that you were at was Earth, and then the next school and the next. All those times you were within those social hierarchies, it felt like those people's opinions mattered more than anything else, because that pattern of thinking came from our early ancestors. Because if we were rejected from our social groups back then what? We'd die. We'd have no way of survival. So our brains still treat that form of rejection like death. So we need to rewire our frame of thinking. And the crazy part is, this shit doesn't really stop. Your own view of yourself from when you were a kid, which was dictated by the external, can still persist on until the time you're a fucking adult. And then on after that, many people don't actually change this pattern of thinking and sort of stay in this resigned existence that they were banished to once they were a kid. People bullied them as a kid. They treated them like they were fucking trash. They were rejected from the social hierarchy, and they always stayed at that same place. Basically, they were exiled into this one place, and they stayed in that place forever because that's who they thought that they were. Because they allowed the people who were at the top of that social hierarchy to dictate who they were at that time period. And they just consistently stayed that same person. So their view of themselves came from the time that they were kids. And this still doesn't change. More happens. Once a human becomes an adolescent, that human is going to prioritize their peers' opinions over long-term thinking, over logic. This is why YNs are so fucking dangerous, because they don't really think about long-term consequences. They're simply thinking about what the other YNs think about them. They're like, yo, if I kill this nigga, I'm going to be the hardest nigga in the world, and I'm going to get validation from my peers. They're going to respect me, they're going to fear me, and all the girls are going to like me. So guess what? I'm about to switch everybody down in my way. Think about it. They most likely didn't have a father. They most likely were verbally abused by their mothers. So the view of themselves isn't very strong. They're very insecure. So they outsource their opinions to the external. That's their gang. That's the people who are telling them what's cool and what's not cool. So they just listen to what their big homies telling them. They say, yo, go switch that nigga up. What's he going to do? He's going to listen to exactly what the big homie said. This is why so many YNs get life in jail, and they realize, pause, I allowed these people who don't really give a fuck about me in this small world, which is only one block, to dictate my entire life. Is that really who I am? But they don't prioritize long-term thinking. They don't think about any long-term consequences. They simply just get in that scenario, a nigga moment, and they make rash decisions, which lead them to be fucked up places. They felt abandoned by their parents growing up. They felt very insecure because their mothers likely verbally abused them, talked shit to them, told them that they weren't this, told them that they weren't that. Their teachers never really gave that much of a fuck about them. They only just wanted them to just be quiet in class. Everybody basically just told them what to do. And the only thing that their peers cared about was being the hardest. And they didn't have any fathers either. So they were just pretty much just a bunch of wild people who outsourced their opinions to some stupid big homies that were telling them to do a bunch of stupid shit. Like, I'm not gonna lie, yo. Them big homie niggas is some of the most niggas of all time. I'm sorry, but they can't tell because they're so used to allowing these big homies to dictate their own view of themselves. Think about it. These big homies are like 40 plus on that same block they were in since they were 5 years old, smoking that same weed that they've been smoking for 25 years on the same street, in the same corner. They know every single person who walks the corner. They sit in them same seats. They sit on that same block, and then they try to act like they're that hard, talking to little girls, teenagers who walk by, just sitting there. The worst thing that you could possibly be in life is a big homie. If you one of them big homie niggas and you want people to call you OG your big homie and you're still looking for teens to validate you so they can look up to you and you tell the teens to do some criminal activity, you gotta be the most lame nigga of all time. This is why those with no confidence are so easy to peer pressure, because their entire view of themselves comes from the external. They get pushed to go here, they get pushed to go here. And if the external tells them, hey, you're not cool if you don't try this in, or you don't try this, what are they gonna think? They're gonna think, oh, forget the long-term consequences. I need to be cool. I need that peer validation or else I die. That's what the brain is telling them. The thing is, you need to leave that pattern of thinking. It's not true. This is why like the worst people that you could possibly deal with are wild adolescents. The issue is these people value the opinions and the approval of their peers over any form of logic or long-term thinking. They're not thinking about what's gonna happen if I do this. It's simply, okay, my peers want me to do this. I'm gonna be validated if my peers see me do this. Therefore, the smartest thing that I could possibly do in this situation is to simply do this. And that this can be fucking anything. It can be switching you up, robbing you, doing the most stupid shit ever. Like most of the people in jail don't even understand why they even did what they did. They're like, yo, bro, I was like 17. I was stupid listening to some big homie, some lame big homie told me what to do. The thing is, this is why internal confidence is so important. You need to have your yes and your no's. You need to have that line that nobody can get you to cross. Those lines are what make you who you are. They work as a psychological form of armor that allows you to be protected from external manipulation, from external praise, which can be used as manipulation, from external criticism, which can be used as manipulation. Think about it. If somebody who sits at the top of a social hierarchy could just make the people under them do whatever they want them to do because they seek their validation, if they basically control that person, they can say, yo, you're lame if you don't do this. What is the person gonna do? Do this. We've all seen it. That's the reason why most people do the dumb shit that they do. Many people who got addicted to drugs their entire lives started because somebody simply told them that they were lame if they didn't try it. Basically, they just couldn't say no because they wanted that validation from their peers. They didn't have any lines that they wouldn't cross. They didn't have these convictions that made them who they were. Rather, who they were was simply dictated by the external. And that external didn't really give that much of a fuck about them. They simply just viewed them as a mean to an end. Think about it. Nobody really cares about you as much as you do, except for maybe your parents and maybe one or two other people in your life. Besides that, these people don't genuinely give that much of a fuck about you. I mean, and it's only natural. They're not you. They don't live every single day within your shoes. So your own trust and your own ability to navigate reality is far more important than somebody else's trust and your ability to do anything, honestly. Self-confidence does have its drawbacks if you do not listen to anything that anybody external to you is telling you. Think about it. The people external to you have a different point of view. They have different perspectives, and those perspectives can work as feedback to help you out in whatever endeavor that you need help in. The thing is, you just don't want to tie your self-worth to what those people are saying, but you do want to take that external feedback and just look through it and say, oh, I might have been missing something. So add what they're saying to what you're doing. If it helps out, you taste and you see, and then you become a far better individual. The issue is that you don't want to latch your confidence onto what those people are saying. This is the reason why narcissists and psychopaths who just have narcissistic traits will still continue in self-harming behavior that is self-deprecating, even if they know that it's self-deprecating and just won't admit it to themselves because they're so prideful about the situation. You don't want to be overtly prideful. You don't want to be somebody that just says, no, I'm not going to listen to what anybody says. I'm the best flute player of all time, yet the nigga got his hands on the holes and shit. You don't want to be the nigga, I'm the best piano player of all time, and you just slamming on the fucking keys and shit. You don't want to be some fucking dipper. I knew some dude back in the day who played basketball who thought he was the best basketball player of all time. This nigga was beyond ass. He shot his shot with these fingers on, like, he shot with the ring and the pinky joint. I don't even know how he did that. He was the first one to do it. This nigga's release was trash. He didn't listen to anything that any coach told him. He simply just thought to himself, I'm the best. Now that's an extreme that you do not want to be. You want to believe that you're the best, but that you can still work on these things and allow for social feedback to actually have a place in your life. This motherfucker didn't listen to anybody's feedback. And guess what he ended up doing? Nothing. You can find that nigga trying to play 5-on-5 against niggas 65 and up, and he's yelling at the guys, come on, let's get it together, y'all suck. He's still that exact same prideful person, and he's telling everybody that he didn't make it. Why? Because the coaches. Oh, the coaches, it's the coach's fault. The coaches fucked me up. I'll be honest, y'all. Your life and what happens in your life is your fault. The outcomes in your life are your fault. Sorry, but no coach made it to where you couldn't get to where you wanted to get to. Understand, life is dictated by stimuli. That means things are gonna go sometimes in your way and sometimes outside of your favor. And the way that you win in those situations is by adapting. And if you simply don't adapt to the situation, which is what you didn't do, which is why the coach caused you to be cooked for life and caused your basketball career to come to a halt, which happened to me, was because I simply did not adapt to the situation. If I would have done so, I would have won. Simply it. It wasn't the coach's fault, it was your fault. If that motherfucker goes to any park right now and he's talking to anybody who's up there, he's like, yo, the coach, man, if it wasn't for the coach, I'm making it to the league. Nah, man, you simply didn't adapt. You simply didn't listen to external feedback. You didn't process it, so you lost, and you're a loser. So you're banished to a life of losery. You're gonna basically tell everybody who you were. You're gonna be Mr. Could've been records, would've been records. That's who you're gonna be. Just go join up with Drewski. Just go tell them what you could've did had things went right. You're gonna be member, Mr. Member. Remember, member? You're gonna be Mr. Member. You do not want to ever be Mr. Member. Mr. Member simply goes to everybody who he can tell, shows him his old basketball highlights, his old football highlights on Huddle, and say, look at how good I used to be, but the coaches cooked me. The coaches made it to where I couldn't make it. Now I'm cooked. Fuck. No, you simply didn't adapt to the situation situation, so you lost. There was always a way to win, though the way to win shifted once things got harder. The piece of the puzzle, it didn't go the way you thought that it was gonna go. You tried to find the missing piece of the puzzle, yet the puzzle changed on you. But you had to adapt. You didn't adapt. That's why you simply did not make it. It's your fault. If you're watching this, understand. If you did not make it in something, it was simply your fault. Now let me tell you why it was your fault. Understand, in every single situation, there's gonna be hardships and there's gonna be things in which you're forced to adapt to. Let's say you had a coach that fucking hated you. It's not that coach's fault that you didn't make it. It was simply your job to adapt to that situation. Either leave or create a scenario in which that coach begins to need you and or like you. You simply did not create that scenario, therefore you ended up in the position of being a loser, somebody who lost. But that's okay, you can learn from your mistakes. But you need to first admit that you were the reason why you didn't make it. Nobody else was the reason why you didn't make it. You simply were the reason. If you did not adapt to your hard scenario, no matter how hard it was simply your fault. Everything is in your grasp. There's nothing humanly impossible for you to do if it does not violate the laws of physics. There's people out there right now that allowed peer pressure to simply ruin their entire lives. Basically, they allowed the attempt to get social validation to dictate and to ruin their entire lives. There's people who are now addicted to drugs going on 20 to 30 years because somebody peer pressured them into doing it. There's somebody who's in jail right now because they were peer pressured by the OGs to do some stupid shit like switch somebody up. To be honest, most of you probably have lost in life because you allowed those external to you to force you to a state of exile, to live in this resigned existence and not do what you always dreamed that you could do because somebody told you what you just simply couldn't do. You didn't want to go against what those people said. You thought that they were right, and you allowed those people to dictate who you were. You allowed those people to shape who you were. You had no yeses, you had no nos. You did not have a true identity. You allowed those people to curate this false identity that you have for yourself. But truth be told, if those people told you something different, you will be an entirely different individual. So you're not really a person at all. You're somebody who simply was pushed by the external. You do not want to be that sort of person right now. We don't have to have that sort of way of living anymore. That pattern of thinking is an old way of thinking, and it's dead. It doesn't need to be here anymore. The thing is, in most of human history, it was very necessary for us to be validated by our peers so we didn't end up in fucked up scenarios like getting eaten by like 45 lions or something.